All right, good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday, April 26th, 2022. Let's go ahead and jump on in. We're running just a few minutes late here. So I want to really quickly just review yesterday. Coming in, we didn't really have much of a strong bias one way or the other, although all the market internals were pointing lower. So let's see where if we can orient ourselves back to the open here. So the market did start selling off. We opened right around VWAP, started coming down. We got below the orange power level and then finally bounced right up into the fast moving average in the power level. And that's where I gave the first trade call. I was able to get our first 5-point fill, but did not quite get to that 10-pointer. It was literally within 2 or 3 ticks of filling my 10-pointer and then came back. So we tried short off the 200 one more time to see if we would hold here and continue selling off. But then we were just chopping around. And if you were here, you remember I told you we don't really want to be trading within all this stuff. So we gave it 2 shots short, and then it just continued to chop around. So until we could actually break down below all this garbage, I wasn't interested in giving any trade calls. Eventually, we did finally break lower, got another trade right off the fast moving average for, again, another 5 points, and then I think it got to maybe 6 or 7 and then turned around and came back. I gave it a shot off the 38 retrace here. I think we had a prediction point there as well. And so that worked out for another 5 points, but never really got to my larger targets. And then from there, remember, I told you as we came back up into that chop fest up there, I urged you to be pretty patient until we got outside of that range. So we didn't trade within any of the garbage again. And then what happened? We went ahead and started trending lower, probably faking a bunch of the bears out, and then came all the way back and then broke out to the upside. So a very balanced day until the end of the day there when we started to actually break out up above it. And that's where we find ourselves this morning. So we chopped back and forth, finally broke out at the end of yesterday, and now you can see in the overnight session here, we're starting to retrace back down. So let's go ahead and jump up, take a look at what we have for this morning. Really quickly want to mention the weekly still. We can argue we have to redraw the low because it continues to pull back. And I told you that's the problem when you have a divergent setup like this, especially on a higher time frame, is it takes time for this to develop. And as this sells off, we'll still technically have a bullish divergence until we break the low of March 18th back here, or the week that closed on March 18th. So we do have the bullish divergence for whatever that's worth. If everything else starts to align down there, that could be where we find that rotation back up. So I'm watching that and continuing to monitor it. And on the daily here, you can see the previous daily bar, our yesterday's price action, has a huge wick to the downside. So a little bit of a clue or an omen that maybe this is a little bottom for an attempt to bounce back up. All right, so that's what we're seeing on the higher time frames. Let's get down into the nitty gritty here. Really quickly, want to mention what was the low of yesterday? The low of yesterday, remember we said we had a trend line coming across from the 2 major lows back when we were chopping around in this zone over here. And I told you yesterday, I think we saw it on the 60-minute as well, that as the market sells off here this morning, we were going to be coming right into that bottom of that trend line there, so that very well could act as a support. And then mention that we did have our 3 minor eye levels all close together sitting right there. So that would have been a very good area to see support. And sure enough, look what ended up happening here. Came right into it. The bodies of the 60-minute candles were right above the trend line. We got a little peak below, right into 4,200. Broke it by about 4.5 points there and then got the bounce back up. Now the 4,200, now that I'm looking at it, I just reviewed it before I started the recording here. I should have actually had marked as a major eye level. So we have 4,240, we have 4,140, but that 4,200, I want to show you why I'm saying that. Let's go up to the 4-hour and look at our structure zones. And let's look at the 2 structure zones down at the bottom end here. We had a structure zone from about 4254, should sound familiar, down to around, again, 4200 to 4197. And then from there down into 4140. So technically that 4200 41.97 should have been a major eye level. For whatever reason, I didn't mark it. Now I want you guys to take a look at these two lower boxes here and look at what happened all the way back, maybe the end of last year, mid of last year. Okay, this is 4,200 right here. This major low, see how the market pushed, made a beautiful leg up, pulled back, came right to 4,200 and bounced out there. And then over here back in May of last year, we came up right into around 4,200 and failed. And then even failed months later. We came right back into it, could not break through. That's where we got that level from. So again, looking at what happened in the past, all this resistance, we got through it and became support for a little while. And then when we broke down below, it became resistance again right there at 4,200. And then once we appreciably broke out, pulled back, came right back to it. Now look into the future here, follow my cursor coming across. Support here back in January. And then remember, it was somewhat messy over here, but still held 4,200 on this test here. And now look at what the low was again from yesterday. So a very long-winded way of saying that the relevant levels from a year ago are still relevant today, right? Right into the next major support level. So beautiful stuff there, and you can see we bounced up and almost came right up into the bottom end of that structure zone up here at 43, whatever it is. I don't remember the number. So just some interesting stuff to note there. And now let's take a look at what levels we're going to deal with this morning. So again, that 40, okay, so 43.24. So we just missed it. And let's look at what we're dealing with this morning. So first things first, the major sell-off from the high around 45.11. Remember, we came right to the back end of 45.13, the major structure zone up there, and failed that high all the way down to the low we just made yesterday. The retracements would be these dashed dotted lines I have on here, right? So somewhere right around 43.15, right around 43.51, and right around 43.89 are the three major retracement levels we want to be aware of if the bulls do start to rip higher this morning. Outside of that, the major, let me just zoom back here really quickly here. Yeah, the next major support zone that could act as resistance is up here right around 43.54. And remember, we have the retracement level sitting there. We have the major swing low, which was a very strong support back on April 17th. And we have a minor eye level sitting right there. And we also have the next major swing low, all basically here between 43.50 and 43.60. So a bunch of stuff relevant right there if the bulls end up getting up there. And then any further from that, we've got 43.81, and again, the 61.8 retrace at 89, right there where we had this very obvious failure back on April 22nd. We had a test into it and failed in the overnight, and then right after the open or just before the open came up and failed. So that will be important with the major eye level sitting just a few points above. So be aware of that stuff if the bulls have strength this morning. Obviously, the first thing they're going to need to do is go ahead and rip through the overnight high and the previous daily high, that red line you see there. Outside of that, I don't know if it makes sense to mention anything else above there. That will be another about 150 points up. But I guess just to kind of be thorough here, we do have our minor 44.15, the next minor level at 44.31. This 44.31 area you see shaded from 31 to about 35 here is this major support level from back at April 19th and April 20th here. So basically held at the end of the day and then through the overnight session, had a lot of trouble getting through there. So coming back up into there from the bottom end very well could be resistance. And then if that doesn't hold, we've got the major swing here lining up with 44, 45, 50, give or take a few. I believe that's 44, 44, 50. And then we'd have the major eye level at 44, 54 that we'd have to get through. So keep in mind that's what we have above. And then down below here, I'm going to go down to my 10-minute chart and we're going to look at what we're pulling back into on yesterday's daily range. And below that is all the levels we've been talking about, right? We talked about yesterday this cluster here, 89, 4200, 4213, and that sloping trend line. And then from there we have 82, the major swing, down into about 78, 79 there. Then our next major zone is 4142. Then we have our 4108, our 4080, and then down into 4042. That's going to be another 200 points down, which is a realistic number in these kind of markets. But, well, that's basically all we need to talk about for now. If it continues going, 4,000, give or take a few down there, is the next major support and resistance level. So let's talk about this really quickly. We don't have a lot of time. Looking at what we're pulling back into this morning. On the 10-minute chart, here is, so on the left is all of yesterday's price action, and then up top here you can see this is the overnight session. Bulls tried to continue to push and failed about 43.03 here, and they're now retracing back down, breaking below VWAP. And we're bouncing right now directly off the 38% retracement. So that's where we're at on this little range that we're dealing with right now. You can see I marked this with this red dotted line. This was the high from the overnight session from yesterday, and we were kind of playing just above it throughout the morning here. So right around here is when we started the pre-market session, and we had just come into that level and bounced out, attempting to come back up. So as we did our pre-market, it rolled over and now came right into the 38. Let's look at what else is down here. We have our minor eye level at 42.5650, which, you know, I don't know, down in this region, once we get below the 38% retracement here, I just want to warn you, and then I'm going to highlight it here. Basically everything from 42.13 up to about that 38 retrace at 42.60 is a major chop fest. So be careful inside of that region right there. It could be messy, or something else that would be nice is we could just see a nice chug right through this stuff to get the hell out of that range. That's what I'd like to see. If we come down into that range I just highlighted here and it's just sideways, I'm not going to be interested in trading. If we go all the way back in history to that zone there, it historically has been a very choppy area, so I don't want to be playing around in there. With that being said, these are the levels we have. We've got the minor eye level at 56.50. I highlighted this kind of ledge right here, which was which was good resistance at the open from yesterday. And then the 50% is right there at 49.25, 49.50. We've got 50% of yesterday at 45.75, and then the next major eye level at 42.40. And you can see 42.40 here has been kind of trouble, right? It's the major support and resistance, and the market has basically just kind of had trouble. It tried to hold below it, and now it's breaking back up above it. So the question is, what are we going to be doing here? Are we going to hold 40 and go ahead and chug up into the next major zones above, or are they going to hold below and come down into, again, back to 4200, break through that, maybe get back to 41.42? This stuff in here, like I said, I really would urge you to be careful inside there. We've got the 61.8 at 36.50, and so you can see it's like every 1 or 2 or 3 points, there's something that's relevant, which makes this something I'd rather not play with. I think that basically concludes the pre-market for today. We've got 30 seconds until the open, so we'll jump down to our short time frames, get to our member section, and see if we can't get some trades coming into the open. So have a great day. We'll see everybody tomorrow.